What I want to do is just give you a little bit of background to begin with, okay? Just to set the scene about this telework. What tele means is distant. That's all it means. And it's been around, as we've already heard, since the early 70s. A really long time, decades in fact. Thirdly, the benefits of telework, we don't have a lot of evidence. So we really need to establish what that evidence is. So what we're looking for is to establish what the business case is and how organisations can achieve competitive advantage. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. The other big issue, of course, is that senior managers really don't understand who is teleworking in their organisation and what the benefits are for them. I'll give you an example. In some research I did some interviews, and at the end of these interviews I went to speak to a senior manager. Now, I had spoken to some people in his department that are teleworking, and I also spoke to equivalent people that were working in the office. And I said to him, thank you very much for allowing me to speak to some of your employees. It's been very insightful, particularly speaking to your teleworkers. And he said to me, I didn't know we had any. He had no idea. So I think that's really interesting. So the big question here is, why hasn't anywhere working or telework become business as usual? We know that a lot of these big organisations, we know technology companies like the Ciscos and the IBMs and Hewlett-Packards, etc., are all Citrix, they're all very good at this. Consulting companies, very good at this. And they have the technology. The technology has been around for some time. I hope you can see that. It's in, this diagram is in the document that's in your pack there. But what this diagram is trying to show is that telework is not something that, or anywhere working or working in a mobile way is not a simple answer. So what we have to do is we have to think about this. We have to think about this from the policy level, from the government level. So we have to think about what government policies and how that can be supported, how we can think about livable and affordable housing, cities, carbon footprint, sustainable living, all of those sorts of issues. We also need to think about the organisation, so the management attitude. I'll talk more about that in a moment as well. Human resource management, productivity, all those sorts of issues. And we also have to think about the individuals, because not every individual is suited to telework. Not every job is suited to telework. There's a whole range of definitions around what telework really means. So often when we're talking about telework, we just perceive telework as being working from home. But there's a lot of different ways. Remember, tele means distant. It means working away from the central office. So that could mean working in a cafe. It could be working in a tele centre or a smart hub. It could mean working in an airline lounge. All of those could be regarded as telework. Who's in the research network? Well, James has already given you a bit of an idea about that, and there's that just gives you a bit of an overview. So the three big questions that we're trying to address here in our network. The first one is, what can anywhere working contribute to innovative business practices for achieving global competitive advantage? Australia has to be smart. We have to get smarter with what we do, because we operate in the global competitive stage, not just in Australia. So we have to be thinking about that. So where do we get the employees with the capabilities and skills that we need to achieve competitive advantage? And it could be anywhere around the world. The next big question, which relates to the policy issues, is what are the transport, land use and teleworking smart hubs policies for supporting anywhere working that will support sustainable and livable cities, telehealth, reduce the carbon footprint, provide access to employment with affordable housing and take advantage of the digital infrastructure. And when we're talking about the digital infrastructure here, we know a key component of that, of course, is the NBN. The last one is, what are the required human resource policies that need to be in place for individuals, flexible work options to meet individual and team productivity targets, while at the same time monitoring employee well-being? So there's a whole lot there, isn't there? So those are 3 big questions, and there's a lot of sub-questions under that. And I'm sure that you all have your own. These are ones that we've come up with, but this is evolving. So as time goes on, we will find questions that are relevant to telework. This is this is my framework that I've been using in my research to try and explain or get an understanding of what's going on in organisations. So thinking about the technology aspects. In my research, the technology was not explicitly stated as a barrier to telework. IT support, however, is very much an issue. So if you can't support your employees when they're working, it's problematic. If they can't get access to the organisational databases, or their email doesn't work, then that lowers their productivity. The human resource management issues. And the last one that I'm particularly interested in, there's been a lot of work on human resource management issues and how all that works, but I'm very interested in the customer service side of things. So what does that mean for delivering service to customers? So what can we learn? I've only got a few minutes here. I could talk all day about this, but I'm only going to talk about a few things. There are components of telework. There are very formal arrangements where people have to sign contracts and they have to tick an occupational health and safety checklist. They have to sign statutory declarations to say that they're not a primary caregiver. I have seen this. Very formal. Then we also have informal telework, which I don't think has been captured very well, where people just spend a day at home getting a report finished, or they have something that they need to do at home, but they're still working. So we have a lot of that informal telework going on that's not really captured. So that 6% or that 12%, we're still not really sure whether or not that captures all that telework. That 6% really is people reporting that they have a formal telework arrangement. This issue that's already been discussed about this visibility of workers is a very important one, and I certainly found that in my research. Trust, agreed work outputs, communication, and how do we manage productivity? Marianne's going to talk a bit more about that in a little while. The other issue that I've been looking at is there's always this range of low productivity where individuals have difficulty getting out of bed and getting organised in the morning and getting any work done at all, or getting distracted, versus work intensification where people are working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Because we have this, we have smartphones, we have tablets, we have laptops, so we're always on. So answering emails at 10 o'clock at night and 5 o'clock in the morning and those sorts of things. And I'm afraid that I'm one of those people. Perhaps I shouldn't be. The other issue, of course, is job autonomy. It's very difficult. A lot of these jobs that are able to be worked, that people can work from home, very process orientated. So insurance organisations, for example, with claims processing, that is something that's very easy to manage. Managers can see how many calls are being taken and they can see how many claims are being processed. It's very easy to measure productivity. However, knowledge workers, it's a little bit of a different issue. And as I said, what are the implications for customers? Are they being served? Are they getting the answers that they need in the time that they need? So just to conclude, there's got to be a clear business case for telework. It's not just about making our employees feel happy. Obviously, that's a very good outcome because we want to retain our employees. We don't really want to, we don't want to lose them, but there has to be a business case that senior managers sign up to, and it has to be measurable, something that's measured. We can't assume the reasons for anywhere working are the same for all organisations. So what's appropriate for Macquarie University might be quite different to an insurance company, a banking organisation, a government department. It's not a one-size-fits-all. Senior managers have to have that buy-in. They have to understand who is teleworking and what the business implications are to them and what the business benefits are and how it's helping them achieve a better bottom line. Resistance to change has to be managed. A lot of managers are very resistant to having their employees not visible to them. So how we manage that change, how we train managers better perhaps to manage their remote workers is something we need to think about. We need a framework to assess sustainable anywhere working to address some of these issues, and a pilot program is a really good way to do this. If you have a pilot program and you can identify what the issues are, whether or not the telework or anywhere working is meeting expectations, then what you can do is you can adjust as you go. So my final point is that telework is not just something that you implement and you leave it, it's something that evolves over time. And I think that as technology progresses with the NBN, with cloud computing and those sorts of technologies, I mean, in 12 months' time or 5 years' time, who knows what technology will be available to us. So it really is something that we have to think about in terms of how it's going to evolve over time. Thank you.